Have I ever been tempted to try on the crown jewels? Absolutely. Who wouldn't? Holy shamoly. I know they're owned by us, but we're not allowed to. We're not allowed to wear them. That's for the king or the queen, I'm afraid. We're not even allowed near them, even when they clean them. Hi, folks. I'm Rob Fuller. I'm the Chief Yeoman Warder here at His Majesty's Royal Palace and Fortress, the Tower of London. And apparently it's my turn to open the honesty box. How long have Beefeaters existed, and how many are there? Well, 1485, Battle of Bosworth Field, Henry VII defeated Richard III's forces, and then he decided to create a bodyguard, his own personal bodyguard, the Yeoman of the Guard. And of course, they then evolved into the Yeoman Warders. So in order to become a Yeoman Warder, you have to serve 22 years in the military, achieve the senior non-commissioned rank of warrant officer, and be awarded a long service and good conduct medal, which we issue after 15 years honourable service. How many are there? There are 33 of us. Very niche market, but very interesting as well. What question are you most sick of being asked? Why are you called Beefeaters? The answer is nobody knows. Some say we were paid portions of our wage in beef during the reign of Henry VII. During the reign of Henry VIII, we were permitted to take beef and mutton from the king's table when he'd finished eating. And looking at the size of Henry, there wouldn't have been much left for us. So some years later, in 1876, the London Gin Company, formed some 50 years before, decided to put a picture of a Yeoman Warder on the side of the gin bottle with a nickname Beefeater on the top, and that nickname has stuck with us ever since. On our birthdays, though, the London Gin Company very kindly sent us a bottle of gin. Can women be Beefeaters? Of course they can. Women were allowed to serve here from 2007. The first Lady Beefeater was Moira Cameron, and I'm very pleased to say that we've got 5 here now. How many people live on site? Well, there are 33 Yeoman Warders and their families. We've also got the Governor, Deputy Governor, a few other tower officers and a few others who live in the tower. So all told, there's about maybe just over 100 people live in the tower. I do tell my wife every time she has a go at me for some reason, I always say that you do live in a palace, but it doesn't cut very much ice. But by and large, it's very special to live here. We do enjoy it, and we have a lovely community here. Long may that continue. What's with the uniforms? Well, not bad, eh? This will cost you a pretty penny in the high street, I can tell you. We have these made by our tailors, and of course they're all tailored to our own individual needs. And we have on it our crown with the Silliest Tertius Rex. It's King Charles III, and we had these and wore these 1 week before his coronation in May of last year. Of course, the rest of it was introduced in the Victorian period because Queen Victoria didn't like the bill that we kept handing in for the red uniforms that we wear, the Tudor state uniforms. They cost a great deal of money. So they introduced this blue undress uniform that we wear to this very day. Do you carry weapons? Apart from these babies, no, I don't. We don't have anything concealed, although we could well do hide things in our pockets, but we certainly don't carry weapons. Some would say, our voice is our main weapon. So I'm kind of glad we don't as well, you know. Have there been many executions at the tower? Well, during the medieval period, there were 7. You had to be someone special if you wanted to be executed inside the tower. Friend of the king, always had a bit of a perk, didn't it, eh? And then during the Georgian period, there were 3 spies, they were deserters really from the tower. They were shot, Macpherson and Shaw. And then latterly, there were 12 spies shot here at the First and the Second World Wars. As I say, we don't do that anymore. And ironically, where the last guy was executed by firing squad, that's where I parked my car, which is kind of weird, but there you go. Has anyone ever tried to steal the crown jewels? The answer is yes, but in order to explain it, I think it's best done outside, and we'll get a better view and you'll be able to envisage it a little bit easier. So has anyone ever tried to steal the crown jewels? And the answer is a categoric yes. His name was Colonel Thomas Blood, and he tried to pinch the crown jewels. Talbot Edwards, the keeper of the crown jewels at the time, his son was away in northern Spain fighting over there, and of course he returned unannounced, but when he came back to the tower, he was dismayed. He found his dad with a stab wound to his stomach. He raised the alarm. They managed to apprehend Blood on the way out of the tower, and of course he was duly arrested and then asked for a private audience with the king, which he was duly granted. He was also given a pardon. So many believe that he and the king were in cahoots with each other to pinch the crown jewels. Remember, they're not owned by the monarch, they're owned by the people of the nation. What's with the ravens? Well, we have 7 ravens here at the tower. Chorus corvax, their Latin name. They're a carrion bird, one down from a bird of prey. And they've been nesting in the trees long before the turrets were ever built. And later they started to swarm all over the turret, so much so, in 1660, Charles II wanted to rid the Tower of the ravens. Then someone quoted a Celtic legend: "Sire, if the ravens ever leave the tower, that white tower will crumble to dust and the monarchy will fall, and a great disaster will befall king and country." He said, "I ain't having none of that." Wrote a decree that said at least 6 should remain here, and that is the case to this very day. We, though, we're not as superstitious as our forebears. That's why we've got 7 here, just in case. And we trim their flight feathers so they can't fly away. Some people think it's cruel, we think it's clever, but in the wild, they're lucky to reach 18, but the oldest one that we've had here, 44 years old. We do look after our ravens.
Do you have a favourite?
No. Don't like them.
There's been a misbehaving raven behind you for most of it.
I've seen one nick a sandwich, right? Take the sandwich off, he's wiped the excess butter off with his beak on the lawn, he's buried the ham and then ate the bread. Amazing, isn't it? Have I ever been tempted to try on the crown jewels? Absolutely! Who wouldn't? Holy shamoly. I know they're owned by us, but we're not allowed to wear them. That's for the king or the queen, I'm afraid. We're not even allowed near them, even when they clean them, so... but here's hoping. Oldest building in the tower, it's the White Tower, 1078. Took 20 years to complete under the direction of Gundulf of Beck. I said Gundulf, not Gandalf, all right? Gundulf of Beck, Bishop of Rochester. 92 feet tall. Walls 15 feet thick at the bottom, tapering to 11 at the top. And when it was completed, it's the tallest building in London. Now it's kind of dwarfed by all the others. Suffice to say, we're overlooked by the Shard on the south side that overlook us. That's well over 1,000 feet. But come 975 years, let's see which one's still standing. Who is your fave, king or queen? Queen Elizabeth II, by a long shot. Absolutely idolised her, and I still do. So she's not forgotten up here, in here, and I ain't going to show you, but I've got a rather large tattoo portrait of her on my arm. So she's very special to me. Do I have a favourite historical Yeoman Warder? You're looking at him. It's me. Of course the answer's no. They're all my favourites. I won't tell you which one. So what's the difference between the Beefeaters and the King's Guard? But the King's Guard that many people see on the telly, they are serving infantry soldiers, and they wear a big bearskin hat. We don't, because we are no longer in the military. We are former personnel, and we work for historic royal palaces, but also have an anchor in to the royal household via the means of that Yeoman of the Guard in Extraordinary. Is it true the Kray twins were locked up here? The answer is Reggie Kray and Ronnie Kray were indeed held in the tower. Now, if you look over my shoulder, you'll see a clock. Either side of the clock are 2 arrow slits, and that's where the cells were for the barracks. So during the national service, Reggie and Ronnie failed to show up for their national service to their local regiment. So they were arrested, brought to the tower, and held either side of the clock in the cells there. but less than 48 hours later handed over to the military police, got a dishonourable discharge, went back to the East End of London and caused the police a bit of bother thereafter. But they are one of our last ever prisoners in the Tower of London. How much do you like beef? Well, I'd like to say we all like a bit of beef, but it is rather expensive. So, yeah, we're often asked that. Are you a beef eater? Are you a vegetarian? Yeah, we do like beef, but it's I prefer chicken. Best and worst bit of living here. Best thing, yeah, we get to live in the palace. Crikey, it's unbelievable, isn't it? Very surreal for me. As I say, I'm from North London, and I've come all this, 13 and a half miles later, I'm back here living in the East End. Winner. Worst thing? There are no worst things, really. Sometimes it's the timings. You can't come and go as you please. You know, we've got sort of strict timers, but when you get used to the rules, you just work. You don't bend them, you work around them. So for me, I love the place. So.
Do you have a curfew? You have to be in...
Yeah, so we have a book. We have a book, it's a late book. So it just lets people know that they're working on the gate, and they lets them know that people are due back in at a certain time. It's more of a safety thing, because if they don't turn up on time, we can then ask some questions and chase up that way. My son, for instance, when he lived here, I used to say to him, "What time did you get home last night?" And he'd say, 1 o'clock, Dad. I says, "Well, that's funny, because someone told me you crept in at 3:30. So no matter where you look around here, there's either lots of different aunts and uncles who'll all snitch on you, so it's kind of cool. What's the silliest thing a tourist has ever asked you? A guy came up to me, and you can see it emblazoned on my chest, Carilius Tertius Rex, King Charles III. Before it had E2R, Elizabeth Secunda Regina. And he asked me, what does E2R stand for? And I said, Elizabeth. Secunda Regina, it means Elizabeth II is Queen. He said, there were 2 Elizabeths? I said, yes, sir. He said, who was the other one? I said, Elizabeth I. He said, thank you very much, and walked off. Some people have asked one of my colleagues, which side of the river is Tower Bridge on? What happened on the day of Anne Boleyn's execution? Well, personally, I don't know, because I wasn't there. Of course, Anne Boleyn, she was executed. Now, I've read 3 different books on Anne Boleyn's execution, and she either had 3 heads or someone's got it wrong. So some say it was 1, 2, 3 different sites, but apparently the most accurate one is under the clock behind my shoulder. They reckon that's where she was executed.
You know, why was she executed?
Well, why was she executed? That's a good question. A lot of people ask, why was she executed, bless her? And the answer is only Henry VIII, though, that is basically because she couldn't give him the son that he desperately desired. And of course, he left that to his 3rd wife, Jane Seymour. Do I believe in ghosts? I don't personally, but there are quite a few who do. One of my Yeoman Warder colleagues claimed that every time he went away, all the drawers in his kitchen were pulled out by a ghost. He shouldn't have told us all that, because every time he did go away, one of us would go in there and open all the drawers in his kitchen. Was it true that Nazis were locked in the tower? Yes, indeed. Where we've just come out of, the King's house, above us in there, Rudolf Hess, deputy leader of Nazi Germany, was held there for a few days before being taken to the countryside for his own safety, ironically, then on to the Nuremberg trials and a lifetime in Spandau prison in West Berlin. And indeed, some of our Yeoman Warder colleagues have actually guarded Rudolf Hess while he was at that prison. What is the Bloody Tower? Well, originally it was known as the Garden Tower. But during the reign of Elizabeth I, it was renamed the Bloody Tower because of all the alleged tragedies that took place within it. The most notorious was the alleged murder of the 2 boy princes. Edward and his younger brother, Richard, the Duke of York, they were just 12 and 9 when they were allegedly smothered to death whilst living there under the protection of their uncle Richard, Duke of Gloucester, who later became King Richard III. Their little bodies were then bundled down the stairs leading down to the Wakefield Tower, buried ignominiously under a pile of stones. And then in 1674, they discovered a chest. Oh, bit of gold. But when they opened up the chest, it contained 2 skeletal remains. Experts said they were indeed the missing princes, so on orders of Charles II, taken down to Westminster Abbey, reinterred in Innocents' Corner, and that is where they remain to this very day. Okay, have you ever been swimming in the moat? Well, the answer is no, because it's been drained since I've been here. But however, in 1928, when the Great Flood happened in London, it was indeed flooded, but I certainly wouldn't recommend swimming in there at the time. Although nowadays, the River Thames is said to be quite clean. And indeed, when I was a young lad, all those years ago in the 70s, I came here with my family on Tower Beach and swam in the Thames. But now they've introduced tetanus, I'm okay. Why do people visit the Tower? Why do indeed? Well, a bit of dark tourism. A lot of people like to know about all the blood and the gore and all that sort of stuff. And because it's on the national curriculum, all these names and everything else is all embedded in our country's history. And the Tower is at the hub of all of it. And of course, particularly with our most notorious king, Henry VIII, obviously he got rid of a couple of wives from here at the Tower. And of course, we've been bearing the fruits ever since. So in one eye, I don't like Henry VIII, but on the other, he's keeping me busy. What's one thing you'd love for people to know about Yeoman Warders? Well, we're all human beings. No. One thing I'd love to everyone to know is that, yeah, we're all humble backgrounds, and yes, we're in a very privileged position. And the one thing we want everyone to know is that we're open for everybody. And of course, all you got to do is engage with us, ask us a question, and let's see where it takes us. No matter where you're from, colour, creed, doesn't matter. We're just here to help you.
The universe is a big place, a really big place. Just the Milky Way alone. I mean, it's 100,000 light years side to side, 200 billion stars in the Milky Way. We will probably never get close to exploring even a fraction of the Milky Way.